Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We're doing something really fun today. We are completely demystifying programming loops. We're going to strip away all that unnecessary confusion and just look at a super clear, structured breakdown of the three most fundamental loops in coding: for, while, and do while. By the end of our time together today, you're going to know exactly when, how, and why to use each one, and we're even going to share some brilliant memory hooks we pulled straight from our source material. So grab a coffee and let's get into it. Okay, let's dive right into our roadmap. We're keeping things super structured. First, we'll tackle the for loop, then we'll move into the while loop, and third, we'll unpack the do while loop. After that, we'll bring it all together in a quick comparison matrix, and finally, we'll wrap up with those memory hooks I mentioned.
All right, section 1, the for loop. This is basically your most predictable path in programming.
So the for loop is your go-to tool when you know exactly how many times you need to repeat an action, right, from the jump. Our source material actually captures this intent perfectly with a really helpful Telugu concept. Manaki ennisarlu repeat cheyalo mundhe telsina apuru. Basically, that translates to when we know beforehand exactly how many times the action needs to be repeated. Think about it. If your task is to just print the numbers 1 through 5, well, you know before the code even runs that you need exactly 5 repetitions. That kind of upfront knowledge, that is your immediate cue to reach for a for loop. And honestly, this is what makes the for loop so incredibly elegant to work with. Everything you need to manage the loop's entire life cycle is packed efficiently into one single line inside those parentheses. You've got your initialization setting your starting point, your condition telling the loop how long to keep going, and your increment moving things forward step by step. It's just this beautifully self-contained package. Everything is right there up front, making your code super clean and easy to read. But this naturally brings us to a pretty massive question, doesn't it? What if the repeat count is entirely unknown? Like, what if you're reading data from a massive file and you have literally no idea how many lines it has? A for loop just isn't going to cut it anymore. We need a different tool. Which brings us to section 2, the while loop. This is all about handling uncertainty. So, you use a while loop precisely when that repeat count is a total mystery. And the absolute defining characteristic here is that it checks the condition first. Before it does any work, before it executes even a single line of code inside its block, it acts like a bouncer at a door and asks, hey, is this condition true? If the condition is false right from the start, the loop won't execute even a single time. It just skips the whole thing. Let's think about how this actually looks in practice. The setup is a bit more spread out compared to a for loop. You usually initialize your variable outside the loop first. Then comes your while statement with the condition. It stops right there and checks the logic. If it's true, it enters the execution block. But here is the critical part. You have to remember to manually include the increment inside the loop body yourself. If you forget that, you're going to find yourself stuck in a notorious infinite loop. All right, moving right along to section 3, the do-while loop. I like to call this one the guaranteed path. Now, I want to pause here because this is one of the most common tropes beginners fall into. People constantly think the do-while loop checks the code before execution, just like the normal while loop we just talked about. But as you can see, that is 100% wrong. The fundamental truth of the do-while loop is that it executes the code first and then checks the condition afterward. It acts first and asks questions later. And because of that reversed order of operations, we get this incredibly important rule. The do-while loop body is guaranteed to run at least one time, always, even if the condition is completely false. That makes this loop entirely unique from the other two. It's the perfect tool when your program absolutely has to do something at least once, like, say, showing a menu screen to a user before checking if it needs to repeat based on what they click. Let's actually prove this really quickly. Imagine you start with a variable set to 10. The code immediately enters the do block and prints that 10. Boom. Done. Only after it has printed does it reach the while condition at the bottom asking if 10 is less than 5. Obviously, that's completely false, so the loop terminates. But the output is still 10. The condition was completely false from the jump, but the code still ran exactly once because the check happened at the very end. Make sense?
Okay, section 4, the loop comparison matrix. Let's unify all this knowledge we just built.
This matrix brilliantly illustrates everything we've just covered all in one place. Just look at the condition check column. Both for and while loops check the condition before execution, but do while stands completely alone by checking after. Because of that, for and while have a minimum execution of 0, while do while has a minimum of 1.
And finally, you get a perfect little cheat sheet for when to use them. Count as known, use for. Count as a mystery, use while. Gotta run it at least once, do while. It's really satisfying to see it organized this cleanly, isn't it?
Finally, Section 5, Simple Memory Hooks. This is the secret sauce for making sure you never forget this stuff. Going back to our source material, here is a fantastic hook for the for loop. Any sarluv repeat shayalo telesu. This powerfully translates to, we know how many times to repeat. The next time you're staring at a coding problem and you already know the exact number of iterations in your head, I want you to recall this. The count is known. It's for sure time for a for loop.
Next up, the hook for the while loop. Ennisaarlu repeat autundo teliyadu, condition true ante repeat, which means we don't know how many times it will repeat. If the condition is true, repeat. It perfectly captures the total uncertainty of the count, combined with that strict requirement of a true condition right at the start. True condition, we go. Unknown duration, we use while.
And our last memory hook for the do-while loop. Mundu okasari execute chestundi. Tarvata condition check chestundi. Translation: first it executes once, later it checks the condition. I love this because it directly combats that common beginner trap we debunked earlier. It forces your brain to remember the exact sequence of events. Action first, check later.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought. Which loop is the perfect tool for your very next coding challenge? Because look, you now have a complete professional toolkit. You've got the predictable track of the for loop, the flexible boundaries of the while loop, and that guaranteed first step of the do while loop. You know the syntax, you understand the execution order, and you have the mental hooks to pull these up instantly. I really hope you're excited to open up your code editor and just start building with these. Keep practicing, have fun with it, and we will see you in the next explainer.